We read the introduction on page Kuf Tzadi Aleph. So now we're actually going to read the Kuf Tzadi Aleph. Yeah. So now we're going to read the actual the Rab. Medaber be'inyan kavanas amida bekitzer. So he's going to go through some kavanas, some of which we know, but I think he's going to start getting into stuff that's going to be good to know. So first we're going to talk about some basic points that we need to know. Let me see. I still haven't got this right. There we go. And he says like this, drush is nechloch l'kama chalokim. So this drush is a very long drush. If the techidim bevar beklalos as called stated to fetus amida. So first we're going to talk about the general idea in amida. And then it's going to come back and it's going to explain. It's going to explain barichos called prat to prat b'fnei atzmo. So first he starts with the word baruch. What's going on with the word baruch? So he said the fetus yotzer and goel yisawel. So goal yisawel until you get at that point you get all the way up to Shemona Esrei. We brought Malchus all the way up to that height. Incidentally, before I go any further, how long do we have to go here? Until what time?
About 6:10.
Oh, so and then are we going to have a back end?
Try that.
So that would be like 10 minutes at the end?
See, I don't know.
Okay, so we'll wait and see. So we'll see how it goes. So why I say 6:10? I mean, where that's 6:10 when you say we could stop. So now let's look at the word baruch itself, right? So we said this idea before. I'm having trouble with my recording. I don't know why. I'm not sure why. With my camera. Okay, anyway, the bia. Yeah, and it says with the chilas at the vida be'ad Shemona Esrei oskim la'alos as a malchus ba'asiyah adabria. So what we're working on is elevation of malchus. V'hidach v'yesh the malchus shlosha chakelim. So let's talk about that. He says there's a kli chitzon, there's a kli imsoy upanimi, and also a kli that's on the inside. With the chilas at the vida be'ad baruch sha'amar. So that particular part niknas akli hachitzon la'asiyah. So that's where we're at early in the morning, or the early part of our prayer. And explains that it says from Baruch Sha'amar ad Yishtabach, Niknas Akli Ramsoy the Yitzira, but the fetus Yotzer and Yotzer, now Niknas Akli HaPanimi the Bria, Shesham Yeshnam Shiva Hechelos. So in Bria there are 7 Hechelos, and those 7 Hechelos correspond, him connected as Spheros, 10 Spheros. How does the 7 become 10? He called Hechel Makavun Neged Sphira Achas. But Hechel Shvi, the top Hechel, and Nikrach Bekodu Kedoshim, who can neged Shlosha Spheros. Now this is the way I count. Let's see, he says the Neged Sphira Achas. He says, okay, the 7 plus 3. Okay, that's what he's saying. Who can neged Shlosha Spheros El Yonis Chabad. So when you get to the first 2 words, which is Baruch Atah, we still found that Malchus, B'Sheva Heichelos the Bria, it's still, the Malchus is still in Bria. Barak B'Tevis Hashem, when you say Baruch Atah and then you say Hashem, it goes Olam B'Bria L'Tzilos, then it goes from Bria to Tzilos. Okay. Something is wrong with my recording device. It's bouncing like crazy. I'm not sure why. It's probably a wire that's loose because I can't travel with this thing. Anyway, let's go on number Gimel. So now what we see here is that this Malchus at this point is really just one Nakuda. It's a dot. But it's still not in parts of, even though that it has 10 parts. He said, "The parts of nuk v'techilas atzilusa, yesh ba rak nekuda achas only has one dot. That's all it is a dot. Shehi nekudas malchus, which is actually the dot that's going to be malchus, I guess. V'adayim menena b'techilas parts, but still that dot really is not the aspect of a parts. Shehu kuma shalema, which of course would be the line with 3 lines and 10 spheros. Shlema shel es spheros. Ki chaser ba tesha spheros elyonis, because it's just the malchus of the malchus. What you're still missing is the upper 10 spheros of a pratos yesh la rak asiris mikal spheros. So then he says, if you want to look at it more closely, he says you can see what actually malchus is 1 dot, but in that she has 1/10 of all the other spheros. Still works as a malchus. The Heinach of malchus shebetoch kol sphera, that is the malchus. Every sphera has a malchus, and so therefore this is the malchus of all of the spheres. So it's the malchus of the malchus, like that kind of thing. He calls sphera mecholakas, the es spheras pratius kanoida, as we know that every sphera has 10 parts and each one has a malchus, and this is accumulation of the malchus. He says, "Kihinei besod, besod l'chi ma'ate et atzmech." So he says, where it says, "Go and make yourself small." Mibli he yos ba bechinas partzuf, and this is said to her at the time, or let's see what he means. Is excluding the fact that she would have a partzuf. She has no partzuf. So here we can explain this little Maimer Chazal. He says, "Amar Yareich Lifnei HaKodesh Baruch Hu." Ribbon Shalom. I'm not so sure that I really understand the pashtus of this, but maybe there's something missing in my understanding. Ribbon Shalom. Avsha l'shnei malachim sheyishtam shucha b'keser echad. Can we have 2 kings being working with 1 crown? Amar l'chi ma'at et atzmech. So he said, "Go down and make yourself small." Okay, we'll take a second here as we get a break. Waiting for Rebbe to come back. And here he is. Okay, back on again. So he said, Hashem said to her she had to minimize herself, and that's the idea of her going into Bia during the night. So when she's down below in Bia, at that point she's only this one little dot, which he explained before. Bilvad ve'ein parts of shalom. She doesn't have the aspect of a complete parts of. Whoa! I don't know what the problem is that my video starts bumping, so I'm not sure what to do about it. I don't know why it's bumping. I'm assuming it's a wire that's loose, but I don't know what to say. So let's go on, number hey. But even when she was just a nakuda, which was composed of, let's say, he's saying of the upper 9 parts of all of the other 9, he says, so even though she's just a dad, but she doesn't have that one piece. Shalah, shuhu sod of kal kanoida. So here he introduces something that we saw in Rabbi Mimran when he was going through the first bracha, the word Baruch, that we're actually going through over there when we start the Shemona Esrei. And we had to try to, we don't want to look at this fine print over there. It was talking about Avkal, and this is also in other places. It says, so even though we said it has all the other nakudas in it, he says, but it's still missing. She still doesn't have a das shehu sod shemus avkal. Now, this is like a chiddush or something that is seen, but he wants to say that he says the yisod of the nukva is called avkal. The haina haribua shel shem havaya. So how do you get the av? Is the rivua of yudke vavke comes out to be 72. The haribua shel b'shem mama also kafi she is boy l'cholon is going to explain. Now, the question is that why is this the definition of the das of the nuk is called avkal. So it's a gematria 202. So we're going to see what's going on over there. So he says, is a Rabbi Anna wrote to the Sito Lo atacha b'midas baruch. So what you want to do is give that das to her when you're doing the word baruch. Now, what we said previously is that the nuk is not complete; it's only a dot, and the dot is composed of fragments of the other spheros. The one is missing the one of das, and so the base thing that when you say the word baruch, then you're going to start this a magic word. It brings das into the nuk, which is avkal. That's what it seems like he said. He said for shenachzach b'menda bechinas das who sod avkal. Said again. So there, this idea when you say the word baruch, so baruch is a gematria ku, which is yud ke vav ke, just the pasha, and then av, which is the revuah of the pasha, and then kal is the revuah of ma. Now, one of the questions that I would have is that, well, I can understand, let's say I can understand a little bit how the av comes out of the ku. Okay, so it's a revuah of the ku. But now he chooses ma to represent the yisod of the nukva. That's what he says with the revuah of ma, which is kal, as hadas shalah. So he said v'afal pi shehi bebria, and even though she's not in Atzilus, v'lo al sechapadaim l'Atzilus, they call makom mamshichan lo as hadas. But even so, the das is going to come to her now when you're saying this word baruch. So it's a big type chiddush for Kabbanas, is that we know that when you say the word baruch, what you're doing is implanting this das inside of the nuk shehu b'kintam b'mayim hamagdilim as a ilan, which will grow the nuk. B'kadei shetuchel achar kach la'alhos mehechel kodesh gedosh, so that after you say the word baruch and it gives her this das, she's going to have the ability to be able to go up in the Cheichel Kodesh Kadosh and the Bria, Lola Matzia, the Hiyos, parts of Shalom, and there to become a complete parts of. So now we say because there's so many brachos, there is bracha b'nekuda rabezu. So I'm not sure exactly what he meant by ribuya the berchon, but let's see. He says the bracha the is ba b'nekuda zu shenechlala b'kol ha'hechel osecha, that she's incorporated by all of the different hechelos keniska b'sefer hazor b'parshas pekudi la'shecha the siva zucha nikra baruch, and this is the reason why she called baruch. I need a little explanation. He says a malchus nimsas atach b'hechel kodesh kadosh and debris. Now there she is. She's up there at the very top, trying to push the door open. Nikras baruch. So he says the malchus is actually called by the name of baruch. Lefi shesham shora ribui baracha, because there's so much brachos that fall into that. V'yesh v'sham yesh law es hashefa, and there she has all of the streaming gold, let's say of bracha. Hashefa shall call olamos bia shehi ola darcham ala tzilus. So let's think of her a second. So he says, when you say the word baruch, he said that that's the name, that's really the name of the nukva. And why call that? Because all the birurim, that's where I would understand it, that she's brought up as coming from Olam Asiya all the way up to the top of Olam Abriya. It's just that she's full of brachos. But the chem yesh the kaveh b'miras baruch, so therefore al malchus, the malchus, milvad shar hakavanas an irmaza b'tei v'zuchuk l'cholon, as he's going to explain that there are more words associated with this, as we say later on. So he says, hine gam anu romaza b'midas baruch. Okay, well, it's a time for another little break, and we want to thank Hashem for bringing us into a situation where we can learn like this, so we could learn this Torah, and this Rabbi Rabinowitz has produced this material. Baruch Hashem. All right, so back to number Ches. He says, Hine gam anu romaza b'midas b'baruch, but there's more to say about Baruch, of course. El Yisod of Zer Anpin. It really refers to the Yisod of Zer Anpin, understanding as well that Malchus is really an aspect of the Yisod, I guess, of Zer Anpin. Hanikra Baruch, which is also called Baruch, which is the way that I normally would understand this. The Fisher Yored B'Ribuya the Birchon Eloyin, because all of the brachos from up above are going to ultimately wind up there. Lo raka malchus the Chatzilus nikra Baruch. It's not just malchus that's called Baruch. Ela gam yisod the zer anpin the Chatzilus is also called Baruch. The fish who yored meratzilus ala malchus because it comes down from Atzilus to malchus. Hanimsas besoch heichlu kodesh kedoshim the bria, which finds itself inside of this very high place in bria. Hanigra ribuya de birchon. It's called that multiplicity of brachos. The fisher sham nimsas malchus akololus called the basocha. There's where you find malchus that has all of the other olomos within her. She's a collector. V'nois and la shefa hadas, and she's given this shefa for das of das. Ki shefa hadas shebekavim soy. Now, where's the shefa the das? So shefa the das is in the middle line. Oiver v'derech yisod passes through the yisod gam ku omid bekavim soy, which is also, in other words, the yisod. All the brachos that wind up in malchus wind up going first. Well, she has the bracha. They said she has the brachas coming up. She's bringing up the nitzutzim. It should bring it up, all of that. He says, "Who omer bekavim soy," but the yisod is also in the middle line, and it collects the brachas from up above it. V'nimsa shecha b'malchus anikbas baruch mikabelas shefa kamizbar baruch. So she gets shefa, which is the same gematria as the word baruch. Miyisod is there anpen shenikra gam kain baruch, which is also called baruch. Now, this is interesting information. It's a wonder what it has to do with Rosh Hashanah. So, das and Nizkar, so we're going to give her the aspect of das, as we mentioned. Now, I'm going to just keep going on a little bit because before giving it, see if we have time for Sifra Tzniut at the end, how that's going to work out. So he said, das and Nizkar. So now we give her this aspect of das. After the Voyer Ketza Nirmaz Shefa Hadas. So what's the reference here to this stream of das that's going to come of the Shiyisod, the Zeranpin, knows in the Malchus the Chatzila B'Tevis Baruch. So here we have Malchus bringing up Nitzutzim, which are called Baruch, and we have Yisod bringing down the Shefa from the higher Spheros. He's called Baruch. The two Baruchs are meeting. So he said, anyway, Asher Hu Shem Havaya Hu B'Gematria Ku. So he says, I think I missed a no saying lo b'chinas das. So he says, this is really, what is das? He says, really, it sounds like he's saying it's a Gematria Ku, is Havaya. V'chadas, so he says, what about das? V'chadas yesh bo shlosha b'chinas. It has three different aspects to it. HaBechina Rishayna, the first bechina, he says, he shall Hashem avaya pashu shall arba osius lulo milui shagematria ko. Now let me just say this again because I'm not sure that I had this idea before. There are three aspects to das. So I don't know if we ever really examined das like this. Habechina Rishona he shem havaya. So the first aspect of das is that it's a pashut havaya. Shall arba osius lo milui shagematria ko. So there's a rivuah hapashot shehu begematria av habechina hashniya. So the second aspect of it is these are all three aspects of das. He says, right? Das hashneshenis. He shem avaya b'rivuah kazes, and he shows it avaya yud k vav k should be gematria also comes to a gematria called av. So this is the three aspects of das. Of a revuah hamilui b'milui alofim kazes, which is yud. So I don't have to say that all out. B'gematria cow, which has come to the gematria of cow. Habechinach hashlishis he shem ma b'revuah kazes. So my question is actually why that? Why that? Because I guess because it refers to this yisod which is attached to zer anpin, and zer anpin is ma. So he says shem ma b'revuah. So you take ma b'revuah. So and he shows us the shem ma written out in revuah from gematria, which comes to the gematria of cow. Okay, we have another small introduction. We're getting close to the end of this year, and we have a small introduction. A small interruption of it. Okay, so just a little bit more. He says, "Asher shlosha bechinos elu," because these three bechinos, hey madas sheba, they represent her das. So he said, "V'heim begematria comedian Baruch." So they come to gematria of the meaning of the word Baruch. If you add them all up together, which is Ku Avkal. Now we've seen it before, Ku Avkal. I know that it's in the Kriya Shemal Lamita that we see this, and it comes to this gematria of 228 or Baruch. Shlosha bechinas elish hem Ku Avkal. Hem bechinas das the Malchut the Tzilus. The really the three bechinos of the das of the Tzilus. V'hem begematria Baruch. Shemarames al Yisod Dezah. Now I'm going to stop here. We really have like 1 minute, but this is where I stopped in my prep. So this is a very interesting subject, and Mitzvah Shem, let's see what happens on the back end.